everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Connected Lawyer podcast. This is Aaron.
And I'm Bryan. And Aaron, way back in episode 5, we talked about the fact you were going to start using OneNote to do all your digital note taking. So, how's that going?
It was a total crash and burn, absolute crash and burn. I've abandoned it. I don't even know if I migrated those notes over, and yeah, terrible experience. And I'll tell you, I think some of the reasons that it didn't work out for me were the things that we talked about in that episode. In fact, I may go back and watch that episode and just remind myself all the different things that were frustrating me about OneNote, because it's unworkable. And I think one of them was, you explained this a lot better than I did, but I had this weird experience where I had it on my phone and I had it on my computer and I have it in the cloud, just like you log into
Right.
Edge. And it's like all those experiences were different. And not only that, but there were two different versions of OneNote that were available to install on my computer. And those were different. And I'm just thinking, what is Microsoft like Amazon, where that's just sort of like a broad umbrella brand, and that in fact, behind the scenes, there are hundreds of different companies, like SharePoint is actually made by a different company that makes Outlook. Because sometimes it just feels like these things just don't work together. You know what I'm saying?
I absolutely know what you're saying. And there are a couple of things about OneNote that just drive me bonkers. One is there are two programs called OneNote that are entirely different programs. There's OneNote for Windows and OneNote for Microsoft 365. Those are two separate programs, and Microsoft is getting rid of one of them, and I think it's the Windows one uh,
Okay.
for
But
whatever we're.
they're not separate programs, because a little bit they sync, right? I mean, they do kind of talk to each other.
They will talk to each other. That's true, but they're in the sort of the same way that um, Microsoft Mail is a mail program that you can use to access your mail on, uh, Microsoft Exchange. And Outlook is a mail program that you can use to access your mail on Outlook Exchange. But they're not the same programs, even
Sure,
though
that
they'll
makes
both
sense.
talk to Exchange and they both have your mail and everything, but they're not the same program.
But
And
at least it's the same
that's
data. Like when you open Outlook and you open Mail and they're both synced to the same Exchange account, they match. In
right.
OneNote,
And
I'm not finding that at all.
well, it will eventually, I guess is what
Okay.
I would say.
Okay.
In that OneNote doesn't have the seamless up to the second synchronization that we've come to expect.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I save a file, it's changed when I save it against across all of my locations in whatever cloud storage platform I'm using, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
ShareFile or OneDrive or Dropbox or Google Docs or whichever of the hundreds of options that are out there for that. And we've come to expect that I save it, it immediately populates across all of my devices and every location that's installed, and it's seamless and it's automatic and immediate. And
Yes.
OneNote, for whatever reason, just doesn't do that. I find that if I want it to sync, I almost have to always hit that sync button on the uh, menu to get it
Yeah.
to sync.
Yeah. It's as if whichever version of it you're using, you put the note into, like you
Right.
open your phone and you open the OneDrive application on your phone and you put in a note and save it. And then behind the scenes, there's like a mail clerk who receives that note. And then they have to run it over to the other offices, the office that manages the Windows application, the cloud application, and eventually, he gets around to all of them, and then it's in sync. It's a manual process.
Right.
That's
I
how
think
it
it's
feels.
the same guy who turns the light on and off in your refrigerator. I think he's done double duty.
Yeah, it's all the same company. This is outsourced by Microsoft. This is their
Right.
proprietary sync agent. That's happening. So anyway,
Yeah.
I got
No,
tired of
I
that.
agree with you that it's really frustrating. So have you figured out a different solution?
I think I have, but let's go through the journey that I took to get where I am now. Because after, and I didn't really like officially abandon OneNote. I think what happened to me was that I just sort of suffered from fatigue. The idea of, oh, I'm going to take a note, it felt like this is burdensome. So I'd only do it when I was kind of in a place where I was pre-prepared to take notes. So like if I go to a meeting, for example, with my iPad, I would say, okay, I'm going to take notes in this meeting, right? So I would open up
Right.
OneDrive, like as I head into the meeting, I would have make sure my iPad Apple Pencil is charged, and I would maybe even practice ahead of time, and I would write. So I'd write down notes. So I have notes that I took in OneDrive at meetings. But it's very different. I mean, that doesn't work across the board because a lot of times, like your phone will ring and somebody will start talking, and you want to be taking notes, right? And you want it to be like really easy to take notes. And so what I ended up doing in those situations was I would just click. I have Notepad on my toolbar, and you click Notepad and it pops open and you can just start typing, and it's really great. It's really amazing. And I also like the way that Notepad works right now is that it keeps all the notes in tabs at the top of Notepad. So when you open up Notepad at any given moment, you can flip through all the different notes that you haven't closed. They stay open in the program. Even after you shut down your computer, you open it up
I
later,
I I just learned that like 2 months ago.
it's great. It's really great. So what happened was I started thinking, well, okay, for these emergency note-taking situations, I would just open up Notepad and I would start typing. And then I thought, well, why don't I just do that for everything? So I started doing that, and that was really working for me. And I like the fact that you don't necessarily even have to save a note. You have to click File, find the place to save it. But if you want to do that, it becomes sort of a more durable version of that note, and you can name it, which I started to name it with kind of the client initials, like Acme space meeting about Contoso. And then I would save it as a .txt file. And then in my, and actually Notepad kind of knows exactly if you save them all in the same place, which is a mistake I made for a while. I was trying to save them in each client file, which is really cumbersome. And
Right.
then I thought, oh, just save them all in a notes folder, but give them that naming way so that they sort. So that was working for me for a while, and it actually is fine. It's a fine way to do it, but Notepad, at least for me, doesn't really work mobile. Like it's not simple for me to just flip through those notes on my phone, and I really like
Right.
that the ability to do that. So recently, I'm just gonna say I probably have been doing this for about 2 months now, maybe 2 months. I'm just using Outlook, which is where I live anyway, and it works great. And so what I do, I open an email, I address it to myself. In the subject line is the same naming convention I just said, Acme space meeting with Contoso representatives. I put the notes in the body of the email, and then I just close the email, and then it appears in my drafts folder. And so now my drafts folder, at this point, I think it has, dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of notes that are all there. So that's kind of what I'm playing with, because here's what's great about it. It's available on every device. you just put Outlook on any device and you open the drafts folder and there's all your notes. You can add categories to the notes. So if you want to do a filter and say, well, just show me Acme notes, it's easy to do that. It's also easy to run searches on it. So you can say, show me notes that I've taken, in the last two weeks. In fact, you could create a save search for that and just click the button and it would produce that report. It's also really neat because when you have your drafts folder open, all of the notes are listed there. And when you click on a note, you can just add to it right away. Like you don't have to open that note. It's right there in the viewing window. It's editable, which is not true in Notepad. So I'm really kind of loving it. And the only thing that I'm worried about, I've read first of all, I looked at, okay, what's the capacity of this drafts folder? Can I have thousands of notes
Right.
in my drafts folder? And it turns out you can. I mean, it's a huge capacity, like 100,000 or something, and maybe more. I mean, I don't know what the number is, but when I researched it, I thought, okay, I don't need to know that number anymore. It's huge. But sometimes, like accidentally, Outlook, like if it crashes, if Outlook does a hard crash, sometimes it will empty your drafts folder and move them all to deleted items. And it's rare. I just know that, like on Reddit, you can see people talking about it. So what I've done is I created a one-click category. So when I open my drafts folder and the view is set to show the category, and if I click on the category next to a draft, a note, it automatically assigns it to the category notes. And it's actually really nice for two reasons. Because first of all, if this catastrophe happens and it deletes all my notes, it really just puts them into the deleted items folder. It's really simple to find them because it's the only things that are in the deleted items folder that have the category notes. So you run a search, you pull them up, you move them back to drafts, no big deal. But the second thing is, it also sort of highlights notes that I've taken that I haven't really processed yet, because everything is marked notes, but some of them are blank. And it's like, oh yeah, those are the notes that I've taken yesterday and today, or however long it's been since I went in and organized and sorted my notes. So I don't know. I think it might actually work for me because it's so quick and easy and simple. It's just kind of nice, I mean, what do you do?
This is this is one of the things that I've struggled with for ages.
Right.
And I've tried just about everything. I've tried OneNote at one point in time. I've tried Evernote.
I
I've
tried
tried
Evernote. Yep.
I've tried taking notes on my phone. In fact, I once there for a while I owned a one of the Samsung phones that came with a stylus to write with. I've got an
Like a
iPad
Palm Pilot.
yeah, I've got an iPad with a pencil um, that I can take notes on. My computer's a Microsoft Surface, and I have the pen that goes with that, which I have to say, and normally Apple wins these things, but the pen on the Surface is a fantastic
Really?
device. If yes, there are two things. There's one thing I don't like about it, which is instead of being rechargeable, the battery it's a very small button battery that has to be replaced. So that's kind of annoying. Um, but the great thing about it is the backside uh, of the pen is an eraser. So
Yeah, I like
if
that.
I if if I write and I want to erase something, it's just like using a regular pen or a pencil. You turn it over, you erase it. You don't
Super
have to
intuitive.
click
Yeah.
anything else or anything. And that's a feature I'd really love to see added to um, the Apple on the iPad. But the reality is I've never successfully used any of those devices to take notes more than once or twice.
Yeah. And then the
Uh,
problem is, you start bouncing between these ideas. Oh, I'm going to send an email to myself. I'm going to use my drafts. Some of them are in Asana. Remember, we did an episode of Asana.
right.
which I'm still using, and it has a place where you can put notes in. So I started putting all my notes in there. And then you're sort of like, okay, I got to work on this project now. Are the notes in Asana? Are they in my drafts folder? Are they in Notepad? Is this something I left behind in OneDrive? They're everywhere.
So what I've done, what I do now essentially is I have a notebook
Paper?
that is paper. I
That
carry with me in,
has your firm's name on it.
yes, very fancy,
Oh,
right?
that is nice.
Yes. My wife owns a laser engraver, so she
She did that?
yeah. Isn't that
That looks
awesome?
great. Yeah, that looks really nice.
It's fantastic. I know where I can get one for you if you're interested.
Really?
Uh, yes.
Okay, well, let's hear more about this.
So I I got this, um, and it's what I use now to take notes generally. Uh, it's convenient in that it lives in the back pocket of my computer bag, so I always have it with me. And I take my notes, whatever it is that I need to take notes on, usually in meetings with people or sometimes in depositions or whatever. I'll take my notes. And then when I'm done, I have to make a decision, sort of how important or relevant are the notes I just took. Because if it's something that's really important for the file, then I need to get that note into the client file, which I usually do just by taking a picture of it
Okay.
and uh, then saving it to PDF on my computer, and then I have the note. Otherwise, it's just I just leave it in here, and if I need to find something, I just go back through and find the note. But anything that's important, I'm gonna put in my file. Oh, and I that reminds me the one other note taking solution that I tried, which was the Rocket Book, which actually I love.
Those are
Um,
fun.
yeah, it's great. I had the paper one that you microwave when you're
Yeah.
done
Yeah.
to erase it all, and actually I really liked it a lot. The thing I don't like about it is you have to use the special pen, and
Well, for the
I don't
microwave to
like.
work, right? Or do you have to use a special
Yes,
pen for everything?
no. For to be able for it to be erasable, you have to use the special pen, and it's just that pen's fine. But if I'm writing on something other than my Rocket book, I don't like that pen. I I like smooth writing pens, and I own other pens that write better, which meant that I'd have to carry two pens around all the time. So I stopped that using Rocketbook for that reason.
Yeah, and this
That
has to
second,
be like a really fluid thing. I mean, you can't be ever in a position where it's like, oh, where's my special pen? You always, at all times, all waking moments, you have to be ready to take a note and capture it in a reliable, findable way.
right? So that's the reason I basically just went back to the basics, and I chose a notebook instead of a legal pad because it's a lot neater and cleaner.
Mm-hmm.
You're not flipping pages over or whatever. Uh, so that's what I use. I use it with a regular pen, and I take my notes. And if it's something I need to save to put in the file, I take a picture and I save it in the file.
Do you like when you take a note? Do you do it kind of in a fluid way where it just you use up the entire page, and so there are different notes that are collected together on one page, or is each page a discrete issue?
I am a terrible note taker, so my notes are a mess.
Well, mess or not, it's sort of, you know what I mean. So I guess if you write down a note, sometimes a phone call could just be, like 3 lines, and then there's 75% of the page is still available to write on. Would you continue writing on that page even though it mixes that stuff together, or is
I
there an
cert
exclusive rule that you use a new page for every note?
I certainly have tried to, we'll call it, maximize the paper.
Sure.
So if I had just a couple of lines of text on a page, generally what I would do is just draw a line under it
Mm-hmm.
and then write something else
Yeah, and
on
and
the
you
page.
know if you're taking a note that you think needs to go into the file, so therefore you're going to have to take a picture and convert it to PDF, and so therefore it should just be on one page, right? It shouldn't be a page. You should start a new page when you know you're making that kind of note.
Eh, Theoretically, yes, but on the flip side, I'm taking a picture of it. I can crop it anywhere I want and
Interesting.
save it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I don't have to like I all of those pages are bound together in that notebook. But when I take a picture of or and use them, I can crop them in whatever fashion that I want.
Yeah.
So I'm not constrained by that physical form, so to speak, once
Uh-huh.
I save it electronically.
Interesting. Do you write on both sides of each page?
Sometimes.
Is there bleed through? Is that the issue?
Some if there's a lot of text, I generally won't write on both sides just because of the bleed through.
Yeah.
Um, I do it a lot actually, where I'm taking notes on the page on the right side, and it sort of fills up. And then instead of turning the page, I'll start taking notes on the back side of the page before.
Okay.
Uh, if that makes sense. So they're
Yeah.
sort of out of order in a time perspective, but they're open in one set of pages there.
Yeah, and that could be a way where you can kind of save paper. Like if it's a note, if it's the kind of note that you just want to keep it on one page and it only fills up half the page, then you can turn the page and make your next note on the bottom half, so there's no bleed through.
Right.
Yeah, that's interesting. Um, so approximately how many notes do you have in this notepad right now? Like how many pages
I,
are filled up in it?
I am about halfway through now, a third of the way through.
Is this the first one that you've done? Or do you?
Yes.
Okay, so the idea is you'll fill that up, start a new one, and maybe these can sit on your bookshelf or something like that.
Right. So here's an example of one where I started taking notes on this page and then filled up. And so I went back and I started taking notes on this page.
Okay.
Um, but I
So,
also have ones where I don't do that.
mm-hmm. I
So
don't think that's messy at all. That looks pretty neat to me. That shows you what standard I hold myself to, I guess.
yeah, I guess so. So
um, have you ever heard of this product called the? I think it's called the Bullet Journal.
yes.
Have you seen it?
And yes. And I just avoided going down the bullet journal rabbit hole.
Oh, so
Uh
it was a thing
probably
you were thinking about.
probably probably 2 years ago. Yeah. And I looked into it really strongly. So I have my weakness is office supplies. Like I don't know what's wrong with me, but I love them.
Sure.
So notebooks, pens, highlighters, things like that. Like given an unlimited supply of money, I would own an unlimited supply of those and my
Yeah.
own little warehouse
Yeah, and you're also
of
a
all of
to
this.
do app and
Yes.
productivity junkie. So bullet journal hits you on all sides.
Yes. I looked at it. I did a lot of reading on bullet journaling. Looked at some people um, who had specific formats for their bullet journal, like their own like particular twist on it and
Yeah, like
whatever.
YouTubers,
And I was
streamers.
yeah, I was really close to pulling the trigger to go all in on the bullet journaling. And then I realized, yeah, I've tried other variations of this over the years, and they just never worked out for me. So I stopped and
Okay, so you were
didn't.
on the precipice of going down this rabbit hole, but your your learned cynicism saved you, is what you're saying.
Yes, or at least kept me from spending that money. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I was really close. But
It's like 30 or
I
50 bucks, right? I mean, it's not a cheap because you have to buy they want you to buy like the how to bullet journal, and then you need the bullet journal, and then there's the quick guide and all that. Yeah, yeah.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not break the bank kind of money, but it is an investment, and it was, I tried some other ones that were other systems that were not the same as bullet journal, but certainly in the same ballpark.
Mhm.
Um, shared a lot of the same philosophies and ideas and stuff, and they just never worked for me. So I
Yeah.
realized,
Well, I think with
yeah,
bullet
let's.
journal, isn't it kind of one of these things where I mean, I don't do it either, but I think I had the exact same experience as you where I thought, oh, that is so cool, which is how I know they made a lot of money because it's just got this wrapper around it that makes you want to buy it. I get that. But the idea behind it is like you take a book like you just showed, and before you even start writing in it, you sort of divide it up into sections, and then at the beginning of it you sort of create a table of contents, and then you number all the pages or something like that. So then when you make a new note on page, like 89, you go to the table of contents and you write the title of the note, so it's easy to go back and find it. Do you do anything like that? I mean, how do you, if you're
Nothing at
saying
all.
you don't do that, so if you're saying, well, I got to find that note from that meeting, you just have to flip through the journal until you find it.
Yep.
Although you do file them as well, so you could just open the file and it should be there if you've done your procedures
Right.
correctly. Yeah.
Right. If I've got something that I thought was important enough to save, it's going to be in the client file.
Uh huh.
So
Uh huh. Okay. That's interesting. And so, what were you doing? So before that, you said you were trying like OneNote, Evernote, and what's the kind of the core thing that just you just said, I'm just going back to this notebook. Like, what can you talk about, like some of the frustrations or this isn't working kind of feelings, or what, but like what was the core moment that you made the decision, I'm going to go back to a notebook?
sure. So the just looking at my devices, starting with the computer, the problem with taking notes on the computer um, is if I'm going to do that, I want to take my notes by typing because my handwriting is not good
Mm-hmm.
and I can type pretty fast. So if I'm going to do that, I'd rather do that. And that is, I think that creates a barrier anytime you're in a meeting with someone if there's the computer between you and them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. They
for
don't
client
feel like you're paying
meetings,
attention to them.
right? For client meetings and stuff like that,
Yeah.
uh, I just didn't like it for that reason. So I would, um, I didn't like using the computer for that reason. Um, with the iPad, in addition to all the to do apps I bought on there, I also, I think, at one time owned every iPad note taking app available for the iPad.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some of them I really like. The thing I don't like is every time I went to use it, my pencil was dead.
Yeah.
It just, that it didn't matter. I could have charged it yesterday, and for whatever reason, it's now dead. Every time I went to use it, the pencil was dead. Now, and kudos to Apple, the pencil charges really, really quickly, but that doesn't, okay. let's postpone our meeting. I need 7 minutes to get a charge back on my iPad so I can take some notes.
Yeah.
So that was that was the real problem there. The device itself, I think, actually works well to take notes on. I can set it flat on the table so it's not interfering in the same way that uh, the computer is, and I can take notes on it. And I've got some apps where it even ignores the fact that I rest my wrist on the screen to take notes or
It's
whatever.
great.
So,
Yeah, it is.
so from that perspective, I liked it, but just frustration from the pencil. Now, I think the newer version of the pencil that sticks to it, I think it charges
It
from
does.
the
Oh,
iPad.
I didn't know
And
that.
instant, I well, that's I don't know that for sure because
Can
I
we get
don't
a
have
fact check on
one.
that real quick? Can you look that up real quick? I think that'd be interesting. That might bring it back for me. I haven't turned my iPad on in a long time, and I don't know why. Because it was a little while where I was sort of religious about it, like I thought this was the future, and I even went through that process of, well, I'll just get rid of my computer and use my iPad, that whole thing, and yeah, I just kind of I don't know, I lost the faith, I guess.
Uh, Now I love my iPad and I use it all the time
Not for this,
for consuming information, not creating it,
like
if that
reading
makes
books
sense.
and newspapers
Uh,
and
yeah, reading everything imaginable, reading emails. Like I'm very happy to read an email on my iPad, but if I'm going to respond to you more than yes,
mm,
I want to do that on the computer. For a number of reasons. But reading the email, understanding what's going on, I like that. And as I get older, the fact that the screen's a lot bigger than my phone is nice.
yeah, you can make it as big as you
Um,
want. That's
yeah.
cool.
So so I can I do a lot of my Westlaw or whatever research, my legal research on the iPad
Yeah.
because I can that allows me to go and change my location where I am. So I can go sit in a different chair, go to a different room, just change things up
Mm-hmm.
very easily because being able to search on my iPad is no different from searching on my computer. I'm not typing out sentences
Mm-hmm.
or whatever for my searches. So I'll often do that for legal research. I'll grab my iPad, go to another room and wherever I am, and just at that point do my research just to get a change. I think it helps your brain a little bit. You change the scenery, different location, that sort of thing. So,
Well, and I can see
uh,
what you're doing now then could be helpful because it's sort of like your iPad and your paper notebook, probably carry nicely together. And then if you're doing research or you're consuming content, it's not that easy to also use it to take notes, right? You could be
right.
taking notes while you're doing research. That makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. And I did try to take notes on my phone for a while, but I didn't like it. I thought that if you try to type, it's just I can't keep up, and if you try to write on them, it's just the screen's too small. Even if you've got a good stylus for it, whatever. I was unhappy in every way with that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Then what about the idea of, like, if you lose your notebook? I mean, how stressful would that feel? In terms of now all your notes are gone. I mean, I guess if you're kind of religious about capturing the important ones into your file, then it's not like you've lost those notes, right?
Right. And that's the important thing is anything that I don't want to lose, I need to take a picture of and save.
Mm-hmm.
And the other stuff, if it's critically important that I have that information, the notebook is not the only place that it exists.
Yeah. Yeah, right. And it wouldn't have like social security numbers or account numbers or passwords. Like you can't put that kind of stuff into a notebook anymore, right?
Right, right. I wouldn't do that, and there are only rare occasions I would ever need information like that, and
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
not where or how I would store it. And in answer to your earlier question, yes, it appears as long as your Bluetooth is on and connected to that new Apple Pencil, you attach the flat side to your iPad and it charges the stylus.
Really? Okay.
Yes.
Interesting. How
So,
much is a new iPad these days?
um, I don't know, and I don't even know what they're charging for the pencils or
Hmm.
that's uh,
It's like a computer
it's
though, right? Yeah, like you might pay $1,500 for a setup for the whole thing.
oh, easily, and depending on what you want. And there are a bunch of different options available. But if you go with the iPad Pro, like the large form factor iPad Pro, fully maxed out, you're looking at like 2,600 bucks. But
Holy cow!
it's it's a computer
Yeah,
in the form of an iPad. It's not
yeah,
it's it's qualitatively different from the iPad I have,
yeah, and it has that.
which
What are
is
they? Like they have that magic keyboard or something where it
right,
like connects to the iPad and you can sort of it feels like a laptop, right? It can do that, but I don't
right,
think it. You can't like plug a few monitors into it, or anything like
right,
that, and it's still a tiny little screen. But yeah, I
uh,
can see that.
and and they certainly have uh, ones that are much more reasonably expensive, much more reasonable in terms of a few $100s to buy. So they have a bunch at different price points, so you can't fault them for that from that perspective. And maybe if I had the new pencil that was charged all the time,
Hmm.
I would go back to taking notes on the iPad because that is really nice to be able to do that. Then I know they're automatically backed up. I
Yeah.
can save them in a location where I don't have to worry about losing the notebook.
Yeah, it'd be neat with an iPad if Sidetrack made a thing where you could have multiple monitors for your iPad. I could get into that. Speaking of which, did you see that they watched our video? Sidetrack watched our video on Sidetrack, and they made a comment down in there. I thought that was really cool, and I hope they listened to the episode because that made me hopeful that maybe they would fix that sort of that 1 millimeter. Like my right Sidetrack monitor is like 1 millimeter, and there's no way to sort of turn it, so that everything lines up perfectly. Which I've let that go. I mean, I am not,
Yeah,
I don't.
clearly you've let that go. You no longer think about it.
Yep, I've moved on. I'm moved on from that. But
Yeah,
if you're
without
listening, Sidetrack,
a doubt.
I have some design ideas. I can draw
Yeah,
them up for
please
you.
fix that problem that no longer bothers Aaron.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. That's right.
So, just looking at Apple's website because I was curious, the iPad Air, uh, the 11-inch model retail is 599. The 13 is 799, and those are um, the 128 gigabyte is the size on those. It looks like
Okay.
so,
Well, that's a
and
lot.
that's for
128 gigabytes.
yes. And it looks like the regular iPad, not the Air, the regular iPad, which are they're pretty comparable in
Mm-hmm.
just in terms of like they're not quite air thin or air weight, but they're pretty close. Those look like they start at 349,
Okay.
but it looks like those are not compatible with the second generation pencil.
Interesting.
This one Apple Pencil Pro, iPad Air 11 inch. Yeah. So that may be what you need.
Yeah, maybe I'll take another look at that. I will say the one time that I really enjoy the iPad is if I'm traveling, especially if I'm traveling like away from Wi-Fi, like on a plane, especially, because for whatever reason, I mean, I'm sure it's like a digital rights management thing, but where you can go into Netflix or Amazon and you can download movies. They don't let you do that on the computer, but they will let you do it on an iPad or an iPhone. So a lot of times I'll just go into the iPad and just download a bunch of, like it's season one of something, and then you can just sit there and watch it offline. So that's really nice. Kind of like what you're talking about, consuming content.
Right. And I think the iPad is designed great for consuming content.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
You can do that in
yeah,
YouTube. Download like a bunch of podcasts or something on YouTube.
I on rare occasion will download something to my iPad, but most of the time, if it's entertainment, I'm able to stream it just because of where I am. And uh, but yeah, reading stuff, whether it's for enjoyment or for work, I do that a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's why when you said that 128 gig, that's the only reason why I can think of that might matter is if you have like a whole bunch of movies that you're downloading or something like that.
Yeah, I was just looking to see my capacity is 256. I have an iPad Pro, the 10.5 inch. Um, and I've got 166 of those 256 available to me.
Oh, you're not even using it then. Like you don't store much at all.
I Yeah, I don't store a lot. Like I said, if I'm consuming entertainment, it's streaming. If I do download something like that, I'll watch it and then get rid of it. The other stuff, if it's downloaded to be consumed, it doesn't take, like, I read a bunch of stuff in Kindle books and I
Yeah.
download them on my iPad. They just don't take up any space. I mean, they're from a footprint size pretty small.
One thing I would think about if I did get a new iPad, and I never put any value on this until, I don't know, until I really started thinking about it recently, but you get an iPad that's either Wi-Fi or one that's Wi-Fi and 5G, I think, or something, and then your iPad. And I guess I don't know why this never sort of dawned on me, but you can basically treat your iPad like another iPhone that you're carrying around, and it's just always connected. And in my mind, I was thinking, well, how much trouble is it just to run my iPad off my iPhone? But it kind of is trouble. I mean, it'd be kind of cool just to have your iPad where you open it up and it's always connected to the internet like your phone is.
It's fantastic.
You do that. You have that.
Uh-huh. Yes, yes. This one and the one I had before it both were 5G or connected to the data. The one before 5G wasn't out then, but
And it's fantastic.
yeah, I there it's on my data plan. It's one of the lines on my cell phone plan, and
Does it have its own phone
uh,
number?
it does.
Okay.
Uh, I don't know what happens when you call it, and I would have to go somewhere to look to find out what it is
Uh huh.
because
Okay.
it's of no relevance to me. But yeah, if I want to do something on my iPad, I open it up and I start doing it. I don't have to log on to some other network. Now, if I'm at home or work or something, I use the Wi-Fi, but if the Wi-Fi goes down, it just seamlessly continues
Mm.
by connecting to my Verizon data plan.
Oh, that's great. That's great. But you have to. So it's sort of like it's more money because you have to buy another line. But I don't know. Maybe that's not too much. Maybe that's not too bad.
It's it was like adding an Apple Watch to my plan.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. I'm going to think about that because I think that might be one of the things that was always, I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm just being lazy,
It's a
but I think it's more
it's
than
a
that.
friction point.
It's a friction.
It's a
Exactly. Exactly. It's just it's sort of like one of those things where, if you have to connect it all up and go through that process, and sometimes it's like there's a frustration to it, it's not smooth and seamless and automatic, then yeah, it's kind of a contrived situation. But I love the fact with the phone, it just works. It just always works.
right. And that's honestly when I bought my Surface, if I could have bought a Surface with a data connection installed in it, I would
Mm-hmm.
have.
Yeah. Will they give you a free
Because
one if you buy it through Verizon and just add it as a line?
that
So I used to do
that
that.
would be fantastic. But yeah, I really like the idea that I could just bring my computer out, and if I don't have a Wi-Fi connection or I don't want to connect to the Wi-Fi because of where I am, I just connect via my Verizon connection the
Yeah.
same way my phone does. Like if I could do that on my computer, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
And periodically, that's been available on the Surface, but and I don't know what the current. I don't know if it's available now in any of the versions, but it was not when I bought mine, and I wish it was.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, interesting, interesting. So this has actually been a great conversation, a lot of food for thought, and it's interesting that we both kind of gravitated back to the sort of these ultra simple note taking solutions, just the most
Yep,
native thing that we can find, and it almost feels like that's kind of inherent in the idea of note taking. It's got to be easy. It's got to be something that's repetitive and consistent, and just something that just doesn't require you to go out of your normal thought flow in order to do it right.
right.
Hmm.
So, well, that's probably a good place to wrap this up. Uh, if anyone has any suggestions for us on a better way to take notes or show topic suggestions or anything else, send us an email at info@theconnectedlawyer.com. This is Bryan.
And I'm Aaron. We'll see you next time.